Step up. All right, seeing that it's 6:30, I am going to call the Select Board meeting to order. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So first thing we'll start with is public forum. Is there anyone here that would like to share ideas, opinions, or ask questions regarding town government?
Hey, me.
Hey.
Hi. So I'm here for two things. One, I'm the publicity secretary for the Hopping Cultural Council, and we're going to be meeting across the street. Wanted to let you know that we had an amazingly successful grant season, and upon research, found out many of the communities around us also, their cultural councils help underwrite their own town events. So with that being said, when the publicity comes out, the Hopping Cultural Council has undertaken bringing back Art on the Trail.
Oh, good.
We're
great.
doing it in partnership with the Hopping Center for the Arts and the Trails Commission. And so that'll,
It's a great event.
yeah, it's looking for a soft launch on Friday night, June 19th, before dusk, because we're going to still have a dusk to dawn mosquito thing going, and like a by invitation, artist invitation that night. People on their own on the 20th because it's Timlin, and then the 21st, almost like a family day festival where there'll be actually live musicians and things like that along the trail. So that was just letting you know that's a heads up of what's in process and will be in the press release.
Okay.
The second is something I'm hoping that you guys can help on a safety change. Middle of December, my son was broadsided. He was going straight on West Main Street heading to Elm Street and broadsided at someone coming out of Cumberland Farms. Hit very bad. The car was nearly totaled to the point where, like, when the people looked at it, they're like, if there was a passenger in the car, they'd be lucky if they were alive. Part of the license plate went right through the passenger rear door. I'd like to see if there's a way of establishing no left turns out of both of those gas stations. I've talked to Chief Lee, he's for it. He's also said it's the most prone accident area in the entire town. And my son's accident was number 38 for 2019 there.
Okay.
So I don't know where the next steps are from there, but the chief said he was gonna first reach out to the property owner, and then if that it was basically a vote on by you guys saying, yeah, we want to make no left turns out of there because it's dangerous and people are trying to plow across traffic.
Okay.
That was it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. First thing we'll do is...
Brendan, sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to speak in support of the school budget.
Huh?
My name is Kelly Wallace Iannelli, and I live in town with my 4 children, my husband. We've been here since 1998, and I've had 4 children go through the school district. I have actually one out, so he graduated in 2018. The other 3 are a senior, a sophomore, and an 8th grader. And I'm concerned about the budget that the school district is presenting. I understand that it's above, that it's 9% growth from last year's spending, and that it's above what was recommended to the school district by the town. With the tremendous growth in the community and the tremendous number of students that we have coming into the school district, I support the school board and their need for additional staff. I am concerned that the excellent education that our older children have gotten in this school district is not going to be there for our younger kids, my 8th grader in particular. We have had such an impact by the educators that my children have had through these years, that we joke that we brag about our school district to other family and friends and tell them that this is different, this is Hopkinton. We have teachers in the school district who, show up after school. They show up at my kids' games. They're supportive. They email them, say, hey, don't worry about this. They assist them with their college application process. Everything from middle school through high school, all that's needed. I have a daughter who's in a class with 31 kids at the high school. My other daughter has a class with 25, another one with 30. These educators and these administrators are asking for additional staffing, and I understand that the budget's tight, but I think that with the increased enrollment and the needs that the school district has, we need to support these vibrant individuals, these people who are educating our children, and provide them with the resources that they need to continue to provide us with this excellent school system and this excellent education. It's not coincidental that these high-achieving educators and these administrators are in this district and that they've achieved so much for us and that we have this stellar reputation as a school district that is high-achieving.
You gotta wrap it up.
I'm sorry, it's because of those people, and I just feel that if they don't have the resources and the staffing that they need to get the job done, the quality of education is obviously going to diminish.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Hi, Sean Davin, 217 Wood Street. I just wanted to echo this.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, sorry, Sean Davin, 217 Wood Street. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of the previous speaker. I won't repeat them all, but I will just add in that in support of the school's budget that's proposed tonight, that I think the will of the people is to at least have a vote on 2.5 override. I know it's not something that's popular, but I do recommend that we put it in the hands of the people to decide if that's necessary, especially given that on December 9th, we had a meeting where the town overwhelmingly voted in favor of significant capital expenditure and building classrooms. I think the average voter doesn't understand that these are two separate budgets, but had they had the opportunity, say at that town meeting, to also vote for the staff that also works in that classroom, I think it would also pass overwhelmingly. That said, I feel like that's a decision that the voters should have, and that's something that more voices should be involved in, as opposed to ending that discussion here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Allison Ornstein, 199 Wood Street, and I'm also here to lend my support for funding the school budgets to allow the schools to do what we need for our students. I'm concerned at what I'm seeing in terms of a gap. The budget that Dr. Kavanaugh has put forward represents core funding asks to support the number of students in our schools. Reducing that by 1.4 million doesn't mean that we're shaving a couple of programs. It means we're stuffing our elementary school classrooms more than they already are. It means we're losing critical teaching support for our students at all levels. It impacts our teachers, it impacts our students, and ultimately that's going to impact our property values in our community. When we moved here 9.5 years ago from California, we picked Hopkinton because of the fabulous schools here. I'm not planning on moving for a long time, but for many people who are looking to do so, we need to continue to support our school budget because that supports the community and our property values and our students. It's why our homes turn over so quickly when somebody does put it on the market. Our schools are fabulous. We should be willing to invest, consider funding, and consider overrides because the schools are the gems of our community here, and we need to help continue to make sure that those gems shine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great, thank you. So moving on, consent agenda. The Select Board will consider approving the minutes of the 1/7/20 Select Board meeting. Number 2, the library fund gift. The Select Board will consider accepting a donation of $500 from Unibank and $15 from donation from Ann Click. And number 3, the Police Department and Fire Department fund grant gifts. The Select Board will consider accepting donations of $10,000 each to the Fire Department and Police Department Fund from the Middlesex Bank. And the Marathon Fund request, Select Board will consider approving the Marathon Fund Committee's recommendation to offer 2 $1,000 senior scholarships to be paid out of the Marathon Fund. The qualifying recipients, 1 male, 1 female, will be graduating in the spring of 2020 and must be a Hopkins resident and have played a varsity sport. Lastly, number 5, election worker appointments. Select Board will consider a request from the town clerk to appoint election workers for the calendar year 2020. Would anybody like to break any of those out?
If I may pull out number 4.
4, you got? We'll certainly pull out number 3.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve items 1, 2, and 5.
So, second?
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. Mr. Catino?
Yeah, I just wonder if we could push this back on the Marathon Fund Committee and just pull out varsity sport, because, there may be some good JV players that just didn't make varsity. There could be some capable students that are at school that are deserving, and others that may have been cut or choose to have to work after school. And I just wonder if we could open it up and just pull varsity sport out.
These $1,000 scholarships are for seniors going to college. Every year, they give 6.
No, I understand that, but if we could just pull out,
So,
I'm sorry, through the chair.
To give it to somebody in a JV sport, they're junior, they're not seniors.
But he also said, like, someone that might be disabled, someone, so he just wants to take the word varsity
Varsity
out.
Just want to pull the word varsity out. Just think it's a little bit more fair to
To be more inclusive.
right.
Okay. Mr. Kamalo, what are your thoughts on that?
Through the chair, if the recommendation is forward-looking, we can share that as feedback to the Marathon Fund Committee.
That's what I meant. If we could just ask the marathon.
Well, I think this is kind of a little bit of a misunderstanding. I think they're telling us about 2 scholarships. They give out more, so they're looking for this money. And those children have played varsity. Because I know some of the people that apply for these scholarships, some don't, some of them have been, that's the word I'm looking for. The BZ bike people that follow the marathon runners, and they're techies, and there's other things in there besides sports that these kids apply to these scholarships for. So I think that this sent to us is just talking about those 2 kids. Which, fine, take the word varsity out, but I mean, that.
Brian?
Just a little bit of a historical perspective. As long as I've been on the board, we've done, and the Marathon Committee has supported 2 scholarships, I believe, each year. I believe
3.
No, you
years
said
back,
there's more than that.
that's happened. I don't recall whether the word varsity sport was in the thing or not, so we're in no rush here. I mean, I think it's a fair question to ask.
Right, that's all I
If
wanted to
that's
ask.
what it's been, though, for the last 10 years. I think putting the brakes on this one and saying no until we talk to them about it probably isn't the right way to go. But I understand what you're saying. I think they could word that a little bit differently, maybe even be a little bit more inclusive without precluding kids that play on a varsity sport from also being considered. So I would suggest we table this, Mr. Chair, until we have a chance for Mr. Kamala and perhaps the chair or somebody to have a conversation to see what their thinking is and what we've done in the past too. I just think we need to be consistent because this is a scholarship that kids have looked towards applying for many years, and I just don't want to change it sort of unilaterally without the conversation.
Well, yeah, my understanding is that the Marathon Committee got very little money this year, almost just enough to cover the scholarships and maybe one other thing, but I think they've notified the seniors that they can't do the exercise program. I mean, there was a big gap. They've been averaging around 20,000 and they got 7,000 something this year. So, I think they've probably already, I wish somebody was here from there because we always did these scholarships in the spring or later. And to be doing these 2, I almost think that they were awarded and they're asking now for the funds.
All right, so are we going to table this? Can we table this, Mr. Kamala?
Yeah, through the chair, I recommend that the board acts on the 2 requests appearing before the board tonight, and then defer the conversation regarding the criteria and qualifications for the scholarship to a later date.
Good, thank you. All right, so number 3, Police Department and Fire Department fund gifts. So a heartfelt thank you to the Middlesex Savings Bank for a generous donation of $10,000 each to our police and fire departments. We generally like to, when something like that happens, we like to take a second and thank them, so I am thanking them. Thank you very much. It's very generous of you. Moving on, Trail Coordination Management Committee
Sorry, Mr.
update.
Chair, so I'm confused about the marathon fund request. Were we going to vote
Oh,
on
yeah.
that?
Yeah, vote on the,
Or,
yes.
We have to vote on both of them.
as the junior parliamentarian, I would suggest.
Jump in. You're the senior parliamentarian.
So I move that the select board approve the two $1,000 scholarships as requested by the Marathon Fund Committee.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, abstain? And Mr. Herr, we'd like to make a motion on the police department, fire department.
Yeah, I move that the select board consider, or accept the donations of $10,000 each to the fire department and police department from the Middlesex Savings Bank.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, abstain, it carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Herr. Trail Coordination and Management Committee update. The Select Board will hear an update from the Trail Coordination and Management Committee and consider authorizing the town manager to submit an application for a 2020. Mr. Kamali. Actually, Peter LaGoy.
Yeah, Peter.
Good evening, Peter LaGoy, 21 Hayden Row Street, and Chair of the Trail Coordination.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you.
So our committee was put in place roughly a year ago. We wanted to come before you and give you kind of a brief update of where we've gotten to and what we've done. You originally charged us with about 11 items, so there was a lot to do, and there's a lot of trails in town that we needed to work on. So we've got a great committee. It's a bunch of folks who are willing to do things and dive in, and that's been really helpful. It's also a committee that's made up of folks who are very experienced and know the town trails, and such that when we have a meeting, we start talking about a trail, and half the committee knows exactly where that trail is without seeing it on a map. The other thing that's helpful is that half the committee doesn't know where that trail is. And that's been helpful because it forces us to think about the general population in trails and try to do a better job of addressing trails and showing the community about trails. You know, we have a good mix of folks who are trail builders and then folks who are interested in trails but also do a good job of keeping us aware of abutters issues and other related issues. So that's been very helpful as we kind of move through the process. The first two items on the first two bullets on the handout that I gave you are derived from sort of the impetus for this committee, which was abutters concerns. And so we've spent a bit of time looking at putting together procedures, putting together mailings or sort of draft boilerplate mailings that we can send out to folks when we do an update on a trail or when we decide to try and develop a trail in an area. We can let the abutters know, let the town know, hold meetings, make sure that we coordinate with other committees. And we've been working very hard on kind of getting a list of procedures together to do that kind of thing. The other sort of big effort that we did was, in thinking about trails, we realized that we really don't have an inventory of trails in town. And while a lot of us know where the trails are in town, there's not really a good mapping of where all those trails are, what the names of those trails are, and how people can use those trails. So we've been working pretty hard on that focus. And I want Steve Lewandowski, who's a heavy trail user, I should say, and technically competent, which I'm not, and Ken Parker, to kind of go over where we've gotten. They've been working with the town GIS, with Esther Diabine, I think, to work on trying to get trails onto the town GIS and get a system set up that then will be usable to the community at large.
So what I have here, I don't know whether you can see the details. This is put together by Esther, and what you can see is some red traces on the maps, which are the trails. So that's downtown Hopkinton right there, and the problem with this is that I can move it around and change the scale without wanting to, but some of these trails are behind the center school there, and all of those red lines were put together by Steve Lewandowski here, he regularly runs on all the trails in town and takes traces of where he runs. And so all of those traces are now on this town map, and our intention is to expose this map and integrate it into the town website, so that when you go to the town website that you can use for property lookup, you'll also be able to see all of the areas on the map. So right now Esther's color-coded all the parcels in town according to whether they're DCR property, Halt property, and various other ones. If I manage to click on here without blowing it out, there's a legend that describes which color is which, better done on your own PC where you won't change the scale inordinately. But everything's going to be integrated together into a very simple set of color coding so that you'll be able to see what properties are, DCR land, open to the public, other private land, and all of these trails are going to be marked up, and our committee is going to be in control of figuring out how to delineate just which trails are which, and integrate eventually with the police and fire, so that if somebody's on these trails and needs help, they'll be able to reference that information to safety.
And that actually does raise a question. We're going forward with the idea that there need to be 2 trail maps. One, which is trails on, call it publicly accessible land, so they don't cross individual private property where we don't have an easement. Having said that, from a safety perspective, there's trails that are out there on OpenStreetMap already, and even though those may be on private land, if somebody falls in those trails, while the safety folks need to be able to get to there, they need to have those maps available to them. So our feeling going forward is that there'd be the publicly accessible trail map, and that's what would be on the town website and accessible to everybody, but there would also be a separate trail map that would include some of these private trails that are on private lands, that have been on private lands for 30, 40 years. Because I think both are important, but I think our focus has been on making sure getting the public out using trails, but I think the safety component is also important.
Mm-hmm. Another important thing to point out is that there are plenty of maps out there that show trails, but none of them we have direct control over. So things like OpenStreetMap, anybody in the world can edit it. I can go on there and delete Main Street tonight, and you won't see it tomorrow.
There's a group of people that would not be opposed to that.
So one of the important things about this is that this would be a map that we have control over. We can designate what trails are open to the public, what trails are not, what trails run through private land, conservation land, town land, and so forth. So that's one of the important things about this.
You're going to know, Wes?
I'm going to try.
Okay. We'll see whether we can get there, but we've had a lot of help in this recently, an Eagle Scout project. Noah Schonhorn, his father's here, he's a little under the weather, so he didn't make it today, but Noah first approached me about, gee, I want to do some, internet work on trails, and how do we do that? And so what he did was coordinate a group of scouts, and what they've done is gone out and walk selected trails. We put together a list of trails that we wanted them to do, and we're trying to get it to come up here, but we'll see.
I think I'm going to have a hard time with it.
But what they did was, because your GPS isn't accurate, it doesn't give you the same measurements each time you walk the trail. So what the scouts did was walk each trail 3 times, and then what Noah did was then merge that to show where the trail actually is. You can kind of average things. So we're working on getting that put together, and again, part of this GIS system, there'd be a link, and the other thing that shows on those trails is whether or not there's parking, what the trail surface is like. Is it a difficult trail or an easy trail? Who can be using that trail? So we want to have that so someone can click down. They're unfamiliar with Hopkins and they can click on a trail and see that kind of information. Is it a stone dust trail, or is it, something that's a single track.
Anyway, it looks like I
Okay.
can't get it. There's a web link, it's just a matter of popping it to the browser so that it would show it, and then you could see all the scout work too, it's very nice.
Yes, Noah put that on a PowerPoint for us, but, unfortunately we can't see it. But anyway, or we can't show it to you.
Not quickly.
So the other thing we've been working on, coordination has been working on coordinating with other committees and then other groups in town. HALT has a website, we've been working with them. And then the other piece then is management, and we've been working on coming up with a budget, which is part of the package that you folks have to look at. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about briefly is when we started this project, one of the things we were doing was coming up with sort of a beta project that we can look at and sort of try all these new procedures on. And the area we looked at was Berry Acres, connecting from the West Main Street, Lumber Street area through Berry Acres to the school. And it turns out as we move through that process, there's a development, the Chamberlain Street extension development going in there. And it just makes sense to work on a mass trails grant for that area, connecting from essentially the Loop Road Center Trail area down through the woods there, through that development. And we've talked to the developer and they're fine with it. And then extending it down to West Main Street where Berry Acres come out. The idea being this would be a stone dust trail so that somebody at the school or in the center of town or in the Charles area could hop on a bike on a Saturday morning and go to the Spoon by bike.
So Peter, Berry Acres is right by the Ice House Pond, right?
There, yes, and then across from Golden Spoon. Yeah, so in that area.
Good.
Yeah, but then it's less than a quarter mile down to the Lumber Street shops, commercial area.
Yep.
So, and that's our grant proposal, and we're seeking your approval to allow the town manager to submit that to the state.
Okay. Mr. Kamalu, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, through the chair, Peter, in terms of the grant application, can you confirm how the town is going to manage the match? How do we match?
We have a proposal in front of CPC for CPA funds for around $75,000. This grant would be something on the order of $100,000, so we're well over the matching requirement, is 20%.
So through the chair, in other words, now that the CPC application process, I assume, is closed, are you suggesting that this is going to be for the next year?
No, this is already in. It's already been submitted to CPC back in February.
So was your application approved?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
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 Okay. So we don't need a motion or anything like that, do we, Mr. Kamalu? On this, or do we? Yes, we do.
Yes, please.
John?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to submit the 2020 Mass Trails Grant application.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, 7 o'clock, the FY21 consolidated budget. The town manager will submit the FY21 comprehensive budget to the select board. The appropriation committee and the school committee are invited to attend. So Mr. Kamalu and our finance team will take us through the FY21 consolidated budget. The appropriation committee and school committee have been invited to attend the meeting. At the select board's next meeting, we will start budget and capital hearings, looking closely at departmental requests. Mr. Kamalu, if you would take us through the budget. Mr. Kamalu, you are on the clock. You have 30 minutes.
I'm waiting for the attendees to join us at the tables. Yeah.
Mike? Morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Okay, First off, I would like to thank the finance team, the school superintendent, Dr. Kavanaugh, the school business manager, Susan Rothermick, and the department heads, town boards, and committees that have been working on the budget submissions for a while. We always say it, most people think that after town meeting we forget about the budget. For some of us, the process begins right away. I can tell you my first meeting with the superintendent on the FY21 budget was on August 1st. Well, 2 weeks ago on January 7th, I reported to you on our budget development progress. And at that time, I shared with you the sources and uses document projecting 3.9 million in new revenue within the tax levy, including 1.7 million from a 2.5% growth in the tax levy on the existing tax base, 2 million in additional revenue from new growth, and under 200,000 from growth in motor vehicle excise tax and other smaller accounts. I also reported that we received funding requests that exceeded available resources. As scheduled, I have followed up on that report with a formal budget memo with a number of detailed enclosures which lays out the specifics of the proposed FY21 budget. We have extra copies of the budget memo as well as the budget details up front here. If people need copies, please feel free to pick up the copies. As I reported 2 weeks ago, this budget provides our excellent Hopkinton Public Schools with a projected 6% overall increase, but is nearly $1.4 million below the amount requested by the school committee and Superintendent Kavanaugh. Employee benefits and insurance, which cover all departments, including the schools, are projected to be up 7%. The town operating budgets that support the exceptional quality services that our residents have enjoyed and come to expect over the years are up about 5%. Over the past several years, revenue from new residential and commercial construction has helped the town address increased costs in excess of the 2.5% base cost growth specified in the Massachusetts general laws. In this budget, new growth is providing approximately $2 million in new funding, almost 20% more than the 1.68 million that is being generated by the 2.5% growth in the tax base. Plainly put, our healthy new growth funding provides enough to support increases in existing service costs above the proposition 2.5% level, or it provides enough to increase service levels, but it does not provide enough to both increase services and increase the cost of services simultaneously. The multi-year presentation in enclosure number 2 of the budget memo makes it clear that this is not a one-time problem or challenge. We will face pressure in future years if the cost of providing services exceeds 2.5% and the new growth. Finally, when, not if, but when, new growth from new construction slows, our structural problem will be compounded. The information provided 2 weeks ago and expanded on tonight shows that we have a challenge in the coming weeks and months. We're entering a process of public review and comment. During that public and inclusive process, we will rigorously examine all proposed spending, and we will review the revenue side of the picture as well. As always, we will provide detailed information along the way to keep the tax impact of key decisions highly visible, so taxpayers can clearly and plainly understand the impact of all decisions on the bottom line of the tax bill. FY21, this coming budget year, is clearly a challenging budget year. Suffice to say, the town has had challenging budget years before and has come together and overcame those challenges. Therefore, I am confident that as in years past, with the information we learn in the budget process going forward, collective decisions will be made that will result in a final budget for consideration by town meeting. One that strikes a good balance in fulfilling community priorities with consideration of the tax affordability for fiscal year 2021. As I wrote in the budget transmittal memo, the one town, one solution approach will be central to our eventual success. This process will require our dedication and careful attention, and I look forward to working with all the boards, commissions, committees, and departments to find a path forward that addresses this year's challenge and sets a sustainable path for financial stability in future fiscal years. And as has been said, I think in our prior meetings, I am glad that this year we're starting the budget discussions in January. Usually this happens at the end of February. I do understand the passion that comes along with this topic, and I welcome it. I understand that some of us have strong passions, strong feelings about this community. Here's the good thing, we all do. I also want to emphasize that, as I've been saying in the last 4 to 6 weeks, this is just the beginning of the process. We have a long way to go. I've been here 10 years, and yes, there have been some challenges along the way. I am pleased to say that by the end of the day, this community always finds a way to come together to handle the challenges. I'm very confident that we will do so this year. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kamala, why don't you take us through what our next step would be here? General comments, or?
Yeah, general comments, general feedback. In terms of process, I think it needs to be said.
From our departments?
Yeah, yes. And also from the boards, from the school board, as well as the appropriations committee.
So why don't we start with the school committee?
Sure, happy to do that. Thank you. Thank you for having us here. I'm actually very glad to see some of the numbers that have been presented here, especially looking to the forecast all the way to FY24. I think it's great to see that planning. I know there's a lot of work that has gone on for us to come here and get together. I'm very, very glad that we're kicking off these conversations at the board level. So that's, I think, great progress, and a lot of work has gone to come up to this place from the school standpoint. It's been a work from Dr. Kavanaugh, Ms. Rothermick, and several other members on the school department side over 3 months to put forth what has been put forth. The thing that I would like for everyone's consideration is what this budget is based on. 234 kids are what we are anticipating coming into FY 2021. that's what this budget is based on. And again, we have been reminded from the school administrators as well as teachers, and we hear from parents as well, that the number 234 alone cannot explain the needs. The needs are very varied, diverse. That number alone does not justify or tell the entire story. So I want us to keep that in mind. This is the biggest number that I have heard of. Hopefully this projection is accurate. We know it's a projection. In the past, we have usually shot up above the projections. Hopefully this year it will be more accurate, within limit. So I would want us to keep that in mind as we go through this process. When you look at the numbers that have been presented, it has been done in a manner where we have put forth what has been deemed as fiscally responsible from our department heads here, as well as Dr. Kavanaugh. And I would like to shift that conversation a little bit to Dr. Kavanaugh to speak to a little bit of those details, where the message that was passed on to our departments while building the budget ground up.
Sure, so I can speak a little bit to that. One of the things that, historically we've come before people and talked about was that we've already made cuts. And I know that that can be deceptive, I think, in terms of its messaging, because that would almost imply that we looked across the school district and we started to make cuts before we entered into the budget process, which is not accurate. What we typically do is we sort of start with that zero-based and we ask our principals, what will you need for next year? And we give them the enrollment projections. And one of the things that we heard very clearly from this board was no new programming, please, level services for the upcoming school year. And we absolutely could respect that request given the tight budget situation. So when Mr. Bishop, for example, came and asked for a social emotional learning coordinator or a career vocational technical education coordinator, we turned those positions down. But there were some positions that we could not turn down, and they are really based on enrollment. So I am going to share just a little bit of that with you. So Mrs. Carver, for example, at the Elmwood School has asked for 2 second-grade teachers, entirely based on enrollment. 0.2 of a wellness teacher, 0.05 of an art teacher, 0.05 of a music teacher, 2 general education paras, and a 0.5 adjustment counselor. Those are the positions that are just needed to run our public schools next year. It will not add programming, it will simply put teachers in front of students. And if you will indulge me, I will just take a look at the Hopkins School, because it's not dissimilar. At Hopkins, we're looking for 4 new classroom teachers next year, 0.2 of an art teacher, 0.1 of a music teacher, 0.4 of a wellness teacher, 0.2 of an adjustment counselor, and 0.2 secretarial clerical. Those, again, are just really to keep Hopkins operating as optimally as it can with the additional students who will be in front of them. And so as I have portrayed the budget message indicating that, we are $1.4 million ahead of the guidance. We are $1.4 million ahead of that guidance, really just asking for what we need. And when we take a look at the new positions, we're looking at 13.5 additional FTEs in general education, and we are looking at 8.6 in special education. I'm not sure how we'll fill those positions or how we'll put teachers and faculty in front of kids without, if we need to take away from that 1.4 million. And so I thank you for allowing me to explain all of that to you, because I think that that's a really important message for you and for the community in this process.
Mr. Herr?
Can you help me understand a little bit more? What is a 0.2 teacher?
I am so glad you asked that question. So, and I shouldn't presume people understand. So if we invite 2 new classrooms into the Elmwood School, for example, we would need to have 0.05 of an art teacher, which would mean that that teacher would be teaching 2 additional periods in the week. So we have to up that person's paycheck to accommodate for that. So that the art teacher there may not be a 1.0 FTE, but might be a 0.85 FTE, and she would be going to like a 0.9 FTE, for example. So with all of these additional positions, you need sort of just dribs and drabs of art, music, PE, wellness across the board.
So in that respect, it's not necessarily an additional person, but maybe additional time, so the benefit piece and other things are better managed that way than adding another person.
Exactly. So if a teacher is not at 1.0 FTE, we can sort of up the amount of hours they teach in a week, which comes at a percentage of a teacher's FTE.
Makes sense. Anyone else?
Through the chair. Along those lines, are there any teachers where they're actually a full-time FTE, and if we're adding hours, are we adding, overtime?
No, we would not be doing that. So what would happen is if we capped at a 1.0 FTE, we would look to hire somebody at 0.2 or 0.4 or 0.6. So for example, in Mr. Bishop's budget, he has asked for 2.0 FTEs, but they will be dispersed as, at the high school, we have what's called a student-generated schedule. So we know that, say, all of our sophomores will take English, but we're not sure how many will ask for an art class, a music class, a robotics class, to sort of fill in beyond the 5 core subjects. So he may need 0.4 additional robotics teachers, to round things out next year, but may not need to add to the art department or to the music department, for example. And sometimes that results in shifting. So Mr. Keller, for example, had requested an additional FTE in social studies, and when we did the math, we looked at other ways to take a social studies teacher and kind of stretch that person over grade 7 and grade 8. It's not an ideal model, but it was one of the things that I said I think we're going to probably need to live without for the 2021 school year. We've been very, very cautious about where we've sort of deployed our FTEs and our asks.
Yeah, at what point do benefits kick in when we're talking about percentages? Because that's where your budget's getting, or the town budget's getting kicked.
So
Anything
you could
above
probably,
19
is it
hours.
0.5?
Yeah, anything above 19 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so many of
0.5 and better.
them, so many of them already have that, so that's, okay. I'm good.
Good. Mr. Manning?
I just have a few comments, and I realize it's very early, as Mr. Kamalo says, it's very early in the budget season. I'm happy to see everything's out there. I do have 2 comments about what we see for the fiscal year 2021 out there. I guess I was completely surprised when I saw, the town debt service and interest at a 26.17% increase from 8.4 million to 10.6. At first I said, where did that come from? And I sent an email right out to CFO Tim O'Leary saying, where did that come from? And he says, read Norman's letter there, and it says that it also included 15 million for the center school project. And essentially it would all hit in this budget, which I don't know if the construction will be completed in fiscal year 21 and we get the debt all in one, but I think the message is clear. But that was a huge shock there. But I also saw that for the education, I've been attending the school committee meetings, and I believe it was approved an 8.9% increase, and in this budget here is a 6.1% increase, so it doesn't really reflect the difference there. So just to get an idea, and already the impact is 8.67%, so I guess I would like to personally see where we really are. I know this is your proposal from the town manager, but where do we really stand? And I realize there is a long way to go in this budget season, but it was a little confusing in trying to find the bottom line. But I do get the message that I know the CFO is trying to give here's what's in the pipeline for these capital projects, and there is a problem going forward. So this was just the first hit, essentially, if we are where we're, what we're projecting or what we need in the next 5-10 years. But that was my comment. It's a good first start, but there's a long way to go.
That's it. All right.
Through the chair, if I may, just one other comment. My hope is, like you said, Mr. Manning, this is still early in the process. My hope is we will be able to find hopefully some other funding sources or some rainy day funds that may be available. Our hope is certainly to close the gap as much as possible.
Board, do you have anything? Mr. Hurd?
If I could, a few thoughts. Mr. Kamal, what was the total amount of the dollars in the 3 underrides? Off the top of your head, is it like 4.2 or something like that?
1.5.
900, and then 1.7, right?
4.2?
Yeah, right around 3.84 million.
Okay, so $4 million. So the first point I would make is that over the years, the town has intentionally passed underrides. Underrides have lowered the tax levy. We didn't need the cash at the time. The books got balanced. The budgets went forward. The schools have been skyrocketing. The town services have been doing great, etc. And all was good. And we didn't tax all of us $4 million. We could have inside the 2.5% levy. We could have just taken that money and put it in the bank or put it in stabilization or spent it on something, whatever. But the town at the time, and I fully supported that, and still support those underrides today, decided not to. And we had 3 underrides, okay? So that took our budget from here, our levy capacity from here, down $4 million. So here we are, a couple years later. We did one last year, but we did the first one several years ago. Here we are a couple years later now, and we have a problem. So our tax levy is lower than structurally what it should be per state law. That's a good thing, folks. We left $4 million in the taxpayers' pockets. We may have to go get some of that now. I am not opposed to that. We did this intentionally with the underrides, with the expectation if there's ever a structural gap, we may have to look at doing an override to reset a little bit. That's still not a bad thing. It's the reality of when you have underrides, you might have some overrides. But who makes that decision? The residents of Hopkinton make that decision, and not 5 people. That's why we did underrides, and that's why, frankly, and this is me saying this, we may have to do an override. I'm not afraid of saying that tonight. I can see this kind of coming at us right now. I've done this for 11 years, and I can see where we're headed, and there's some logic to the whole process. The second point I would make is, and it's been said 10 times already tonight, not only by me, but by the school committee chair and others, and Mr. Kamalo, but I'll say it now, this is very early in the process. The nasty grams I got today, that the vote I'm going to take tonight is going to ruin Hopkinton forever, are incorrect. They are based on false information. No one is making any decisions tonight about $1.4 million for the schools or $300,000 for town services. It's not going to happen. This is very early in the process. Setting up an override, if that's what we need to do, is going to take a couple of months. So this notion and these emails and these nasty grams that we're not committed to the town, that we're not committed to the schools, that we don't work very hard on behalf of the town, yada, 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 is all based on false information. So who's ever spreading the false information, I would love it if they came to a meeting and sat here with all of you and heard firsthand how we're going to figure this out together. We're not going to do it via email. We sure as hell are not going to do it on Facebook. We're going to do it here. So if you want to participate in the process, I would encourage you to come here and talk to us about it, and we'll figure it out together, okay? And override is a possibility. The 3 people that came here tonight and spoke to us had some great ideas and some great observations and presented their thoughts very, very well. That's how we're going to solve this problem together. Sending nasty grams is not going to help the process. And the last thing I would bring up is, from my seat, the schools have done a fabulous job in Hopkinton. The schools have built the town, EMC built the town, and the residents of Hopkinton built the town in the last 50 years. That's the reality of the situation. Those 3 things are key drivers in Hopkinton's history since World War II, basically. And we're not going to do anything from my seat that's going to jeopardize the integrity of our schools. So hang in there, relax, take a deep breath, come to a meeting and participate, get off your computer, and all will be good. If we start fighting with each other and we start insulting each other, like some of the things my colleagues and I got today, that is not helping the cause. It's just causing irritation and aggravation that then distracts us from the real problem at hand, which is taking care of the schools, taking care of police and fire, taking care of the senior center, taking care of the library, and all the things we need to do as residents. So having sat here for a long time and seen all this sort of misguided emotions already start this year, I'm just trying to nip it in the bud right now. I'm sure I'm annoying a few people. That's okay. But the reality is we can solve this if we work together. If we insult each other, it's not going to make anything happen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well said, Mr. Herr.
And if I may, through the chair, and I also want to reiterate, some of those points. We're one pair of pants. We have different pockets, but we're one pair of pants, as a town. And, I come from a family of 7. I'm the only one that didn't go into education. So, I come from a family of educators and administrators. So I know how important, the schools are to the town. My sister Sissy retired just a few years ago after 34 years here in Hopkinton. And she's probably watching, making sure that I'm still taking care of the schools. So, we're all advocates for the schools. We're advocates for public safety, because we keep saying that we're getting a lot of school children. Well, they come with parents too, and so we have to take care of all the services of the town. We've got to get up to 30,000 feet and make sure that we all grow together, and because we're all on the same side. So some of those emails today were just horrible. But to Mr. Herr's point, we're going to get it done. We've got it done for all these years. I've been here for 6, and we got it done every year. It got a little tense sometimes because everybody's passionate, but we're all, we're all in violent agreement, really. So thanks for hanging with us. We're going to do great.
Through the chair. One of the things that I found annoying was the questions about transparency, and I voted against the underride. But I think one thing that the underride does do is it forces us to be even more transparent when we need more money. And if we do need to go for an override, yes, now we have to be completely transparent and say, we need more money, here's where it's going, this is why we need it. So, I mean, I can only echo what my fellow select board members are saying, and that we're going to get this done. It is early, and we're transparent. We're going to let you know what's going on. Come to the meetings, and if you're looking for transparency, we have it. It's all right here in front of you. Thank you.
Well, I've worked in the assessing department for a lot of years, and on the other end of it, I get all the applications from seniors and people asking for tax breaks, and some of them are very sad to read. And I realize I'm for the whole town, and that's just it. We are a whole town, and we have to work together to solve our problems. Every department has to work on the problems. We're not one department and no town. We are a whole town with a lot of different people and a lot of different values, and we do have to all work together because some of us are very much struggling, and we have to take that into consideration also.
Good. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So annual town meeting articles, select board will review its own ATM articles and vote to submit articles for the 2020 annual town meeting warrant. That's you, Mr. Kamalu.
Yes, over the past meetings, we have presented the select board with a list of potential ATM 2020 warrant articles. We have provided the list included in the meeting packet as the list that we're recommending be included in the warrant. As we know, the warrant closes February 3rd, and this is the last meeting of the board before that deadline. If I may walk you through the list, and this is for the sake of the public at home. Number 1, authorized list of East Main Street property for the International Marathon Center. Number 2, new trench safety officer bylaw. Number 3, amend general bylaw section 62.2 to comply with the state statute regarding fines for failure to license dogs. Special act, change board of selectmen to select board in charter. Accept Legacy Farms North as a public way. This was at the special town meeting. We have received updates and inputs from the residents regarding this issue. TIF agreement for 80 South Street. Princeton Road lot disposition, Hayward Street lot disposition, We have 2 contracts that might require town meeting approval, fire union and the new library union. And then the street opening permit bylaw. The following are the recurring articles: acceptance of town reports, last fiscal year supplemental appropriations, I hope we have none, last fiscal year budget transfers, unpaid bills from previous fiscal years, property tax exemption increase, personal property tax bill threshold, setting the salary of the elected officials, current fiscal year operating budget, revolving fund limits, Chapter 90 highway funds, transfer to the General Stabilization Fund, Capital Expense Stabilization Fund, as well as investing in the Post-Employment Benefit Liability Trust Fund. Pay-as-you-go capital expenses, CPC recommendations, as well as funds. So our request is that the board authorize town staff to submit these articles as presented.
Board?
There's nothing on there, I mean, there's a lot of administrative stuff there.
Yeah.
There's no major changes that I'm aware of in any of those articles, anything that's really got some people concerned or energized in any way.
Don't see any.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of it, that's what I'm saying, I'm not aware, I've looked at them, I've not heard anything. We've heard from one crowd for the most part so far this season, and we just covered that, so, I think we're, from my perspective, we're pretty good to go.
We're pretty good. Yep. Okay. All right. Mr. Catino, I will accept a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to submit the...
I'm sorry, before we do that, anyone else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, though, but I had mentioned at a previous meeting what it would take to raise a threshold for overturning a previous not a special town, but a town meeting vote.
Yeah.
And is that something that we would need to put on the warrant in order to, in order to raise that threshold?
So examples from changing it from 200 signatures to 1,000 signatures.
Exactly.
Or whatever the number may be.
Whatever the number may
I just
be.
asked Mr. Herr the same question. So is that something that we can do here, or is that something that is charter related, or?
Realizing that the warrant is closing in a matter of days, I think the board will need more time to review and socialize that concept before putting it on a warrant.
So maybe look into it and do it for next year?
That's fine.
Sound good?
Yes.
But at least keep this on something that we're thinking about.
Oh, I don't, every time I drive by the high school, I think about that now, so. All right, sorry, Mr. Catino, as you were.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to submit the following articles to the 2020 annual town meeting warrant. Would you like me to list them for posterity?
No,
Okay.
as read.
Okay, as read, 1 through 11 for potential ATM 2020 warrant articles, and 1 through 16 with the recurring articles.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Carries. Thank you very much. Second, Fruit Street Bridge replacement by Mass DOT at 750. Is the DOT here?
With your permission, Mr. Chair, we propose that the board postpone this discussion to its next meeting.
You have my permission, Mr. Kamalo.
Yeah, the
You
reason
don't even need
being...
an explanation. You have my permission.
Thank you.
Town manager report.
Okay. Main Street Corridor Project. As we reported previously, the Federal Highway Administration has approved the Main Street Corridor Project, issuing the environmental permits required. Right of way, I met with Matt and Amanda, in fact, this afternoon. We are still planning to provide the 100% submission to Mass DOT by the end of January. Appraisals, staff and town council are now reviewing the next steps regarding the offer letters for easements. That process will have to go through the select board.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on the economic development front, 1854 Cycling Company is seeking a tax increment finance agreement. We have met with them several times. They have a very interesting concept, manufacturing high-tech bicycles for use by public safety personnel. They have identified 80 South Street as their future home and have formally submitted a letter of intent to apply for a TIF. Our next steps would be for the Select Board to invite 1854 Cycling Company representatives to a future Select Board meeting so that they can pitch their request.
So my next question would be, how could we ever get something on the agenda with the word cycling without having Mr. Harrow present? Well done, Mr. Kamala, well done. Moving forward.
Yeah.
They just did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next one is KEA OZ Technologies. They are seeking a host community agreement. This is a company that would like to establish a THC testing laboratory. They're interested in leasing space at 86 South Street. If permitted in Hopkinton, their operation will provide strictly a service and there'll be no products produced or distributed on site. So it's a laboratory strictly doing testing.
How are they doing testing, Mr. Kamala?
Yeah, what are they testing?
Is that a ad in the Hopkinton Independent and Hop News for people to walk in and test? Or is that something that we're doing otherwise?
Yeah, this would be THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol, marijuana.
I get what THC is. I get that.
Didn't we ban that?
So
No, I believe, Elaine, feel free to jump in.
Testing labs are allowed.
Yeah.
I thought we said research labs are allowed, but we didn't, though I thought it said testing was not allowed.
No, testing and research is allowed, all retail is not.
Retail is not, yeah.
Well, retail manufacturing and everything.
that's why we can still go down to the start line testing labs, if we so choose.
Yeah.
All right.
And also, just an editorial note, this is becoming a very interesting topic in our office. Late yesterday, I received another email or inquiry from a very reputable entity or facility here in town, already in Hopkinton, saying they are interested in pursuing the same process.
Just to go on record, this is the type of business that I thought is perfectly allowable and is not inviting kind of the bad character that we're always associating with THC.
So through the chair, with that in mind, can we revise the town manager's goals? I thought that was one of the goals that got dropped off from my list.
We may not, Mr. Kamala, but thank you for your question.
So we just had a pretty pointed conversation about revenue shortfalls and budgets and everything, right? These are two opportunities, I personally think, to safely and intelligently enhance the tax base if at all possible. So, I mean, first blush, first read for me is this is interesting and it's certainly worth checking into.
If I may, this also brings us to the need for an economic development office, so we should still continue to look into something like that.
Okay. You good, Mr. Kamala?
Good.
Okay.
So with the board's permission, we'll be inviting these two entities to appear before the board at your next meeting.
I look forward to it.
I have one question. On this 1854 TIF, this would be our second TIF, right? Do we do Lonza or
Lichen?
something?
No, lichen.
Lichen.
Yes.
How is that going?
My understanding is going well. They've gone through the building process. They are now refitting the site. I actually spoke with Tony about 2 weeks ago. They expect to be operational this coming summer.
Okay.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Mr. Khumalo, you'd mentioned that a lot of the appraisals had come in on the Main Street corridor. Are those coming in like within the budget range that we were predicting? Or just, I mean, I know that they need to be reviewed and everything, but...
Yeah, they are coming in, some of them are coming in outside the budget range. However, we're still going through that process of giving feedback to all the stakeholders involved before finalizing the report.
Yeah. Isn't some of that based on assumptions that were made by the appraisers that aren't necessarily accurate?
That's part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, what an easement is worth is what someone's willing to pay. So,
All right. Liaison reports. Mary Jo, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I went to the Marathon Committee meeting this month, and they're well on their way, which also led to a meeting I initiated with John Westerling, Adam Monroe, Mike Manser, and myself met Friday morning, because I have been concerned for a number of years of the condition of Claflin Street. As Mr. Kamalo knows, he was out there last year, and we had a walk through, and it has been put on the list. We're going to do a few things for this year to help with the situation, and it's on the list for resurfacing and redoing for next year, and it's vitally needed if we're going to have all the elites warming up back there forever.
Mr. Herr.
I had the opportunity to join the Budget Advisory Group meeting the other day, last week, or 2 weeks ago, with Mr. Cavallo, Mr. Tedstone, and others representing the schools, as well as our finance office. A little bit of a precursor to tonight's discussion. I thought it was a good meeting. We basically all agreed that we had to reset expectations. We had to reset timelines a little bit. The budget process technically starts in October of each year. And then in November, December, town departments get together, they put their budgets together, some things come into us in January, and then we've had a long dialogue between October and January about various budgets and discussions about certain things. And then we kind of get into the meat of what we talked about tonight and going forward, which is how we're gonna massage this thing to make it balanced so everybody gets what they want. But we had this little thing called the special town meeting. And the special town meeting, we'd set the budget message, I think, October 26th, 27th, whenever it was. And I think 2 days later, we had to set the special town meeting date, or within a week or so. So all of a sudden, the special town meeting took over town hall. The special town meeting took over the lives of members of the Board of Selectmen. The special town meeting took over the lives and the professional time and personal time of a lot of professional staff. I was talking to the town engineer on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, Tuesday morning, all days of the time and night, trying to figure things out. So the special town meeting took the budget process and basically put it on hold. We didn't get to that earlier tonight, but I wanted to cover it here in the liaison portion. And that's a little bit of a problem for us in that I feel a little behind. We're a little behind in the public debate around the budget right now. And I think that's evident by some of the mastygrams we got today, as well as some of the points that were made much better points though this evening. We're behind in the public debate about the budget. We're okay with the timeline, and we're going to be okay for town meeting. But we discussed a lot of that at the Budget Advisory Group meeting, and everybody, the key players in the room, agreed to kind of reset the clock, put the special town meeting behind us, and let's get going on the budget going forward. I think tonight was a good step to kind of reset expectations publicly too, but that's the meeting I attended 2 weeks ago. With you.
With me. Mr. Catino.
Yeah, I had some discussions with the upper echelon of the BAA, already looking forward to the 125th, and just trying to make sure that we're going to be able to handle it. And then this morning I was with the Hopkinton 2030 group with the economic development, and as I mentioned before, they're really pushing for an economic development office, as well as a meeting with the tax assessment office, the office, just to look for some more transparency and how we can work together to help the businesses absorb any of this, the increased taxes, and to make sure that we're all working together. Because everybody understands that we need to have business and we need to have taxes. But originally the group was called Hopkinton 2020, whereby the year 2020 we're going to have 20% business in town. Well, we're below that, and we're
at 14%?
Verge of slipping. Yeah, somewhere in that range. But, so now we're called 2030, so we're hoping to get to 20% by the year 2030 now. They're looking to see if we can get some help and work that around. But, working with the town manager and some of the other departments, I'm sure we can get something going.
Good. I don't have Mr. Nasrullo. Okay, so I went to the open space meetings, a couple of those. We have a new board member who was here tonight, and had many discussions on many things, and they were very riveting. So, good things coming out of that board. So, future board agenda items. Anybody? Mr. Kamalo, I did get an email from a business owner in town asking if she's got a very small business in town, a salon. She was asking if she could take part in maybe being maybe not a liaison, but wondering how welcoming it would be for her to come in and sit in on the downtown corridor project, for her to kind of project her thoughts to how it's going to impact her business and things like that. I've sent her to you. I don't know if she has reached out to you yet or not, but I will follow up with her, let her know that I have officially, on camera, said that she will contact you.
We look forward to
it
it.
a lot.
If I may, to the chair, I was wondering if we could look into where we stand on all the parking coming up, because I know that's going to come up during the downtown, any downtown talks, and if we can get together where we stand, where some of the stuff might happen, and RFPs and all that kind of stuff, so we can get an update so people understand where we're going, and that that there is a timeline to everything.
Quick update for the board.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say I forgot to say, I had been to the assessors meeting also, and they are almost through with their exemption applications that have come into them, so that the money can come off of the tax bill. And they're working very hard at that. And I just want to remind people, if you do need a tax exemption, and you do need to fill out the forms, and you have to get them in, the sooner you get them in, the sooner you can have the the tax taken off your bill.
Mr. Herr?
Mr. Kamalo, back to the budget again. It's kind of the theme tonight for me. If you could walk us through what you think the next couple of meetings are going to look like, or the next month or two is going to look like, in terms of when we actually will make some decisions about the budget and revenue sources and things like that. Just, so the future agenda items will be, what are we going to have to do to kind of advance this process now going forward?
Yeah, through the chair. We have scheduled the budget advisory group meetings every Thursday. The next phase in the budget process would be to bring the department heads before the board to explain their budget submissions. We're trying to see if we can do that in one meeting. It may require us to set aside some considerable amount of time to do that. I think it's helpful that we do it in one meeting. And then thereafter, we can then move to the process of identifying how else we could manage the budget.
Are there any timeline concerns we have to set ballot questions and things of that nature? We're not up against stuff like that just yet, are we?
In terms of ballot questions, no. I think the key deadline will be the one when the select board moves the budget over to the appropriations committee.
So let's go back to the question we had earlier this evening, which was our article, the articles we were sponsoring, with the warrant closing on February 3rd. If there's a possibility of an override, doesn't that have to be on the warrant?
I think similar to how we've handled that in the past, it would be part of the budget article. However, we could list it as a separate article.
I think we better get some guidance from town council on that. We don't want to get caught blindsided.
Yeah.
If that's something we're going to need to do, we might have to put a placeholder out there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the underrides were separate articles, weren't they?
The last one was not.
It was inside the budget article?
You may remember the discussion, and through the chair, Connor, feel free to jump in here. I thought the underwrite, I still remember, I think the underwrite was part of the budget article. And that did raise some questions.
I think we might be better served, and I think the community might be better served in this whole notion of transparency would be better if we were not prepared, at least with town council and Connor's input, and maybe you and town council being on the same page on this. If we have to consider an override, where and how are we going to do that in the warrant with the deadline looming on February 3rd?
Yeah, so like Norman said in the past, when it comes to the underrides, we've basically had non-binding resolutions for town meeting to vote on. But it still moves to the ballot regardless of how town meeting votes on a non-binding resolution. So even if just in this last underride, town meeting voted to strike the phrasing regarding the underride from the warrant at town meeting, but that didn't stop it from going to the ballot and still being able to be voted there.
The same rules apply for an override, though? We're asking for more
So I'm not 100% sure with the override. That would be a good question for town council, but for the most part, it's one of those questions that is really decided at the ballot. And the ballot deadline's a little bit further away, so yeah, it's definitely going to be looking at more of those budget deadlines before worrying too much about the ballot question deadlines, because that's not until April.
Got it. So, Mr. Kamala, as a future agenda item, we may need to convene, depending on town council input, to set a placeholder for that issue.
Great.
One more quick, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one more quick one. Yeah, we were just talking about, TIFs for all of these companies, 2 more coming in. Is it possible to take half the revenue that we would have gotten and put into a tax relief fund, so that, back what Mary Jo was talking about? And, half the tax savings be donated by the company to our tax relief fund. It just as a good faith, and it just helps out everybody. Maybe it's moving pockets around.
I'm not sure how that would work.
Exactly.
Moving pockets around or something, but, if it's just, another way to fund our tax relief fund. Just,
I don't think we can do that and I'll tell you why, because the tax relief fund, the tax relief committee is not allowed to solicit in any way. And we would be soliciting that these businesses donate to that fund. And we cannot do that.
The committee can't, but we can.
No.
I don't think so, but I mean.
Hey, I was just figuring
That's why we
a way to put money into that fund.
That's why we try to publicly announce that, we have a tax relief fund and we're looking for donations and that sort of thing, but we don't, we can't specifically go out and say, please donate to the tax relief fund.
Well, I think we could certainly, I think Mr. Catino raises an excellent point. If there's any way we can help the seniors in town as we deal with these budget situations and possible increases in taxing above 2.5, if there's a way to do it legally, we have to do it legally, obviously.
Right.
Mr. Catino, we should explore that. I agree with you. So let's ask Ray. There's a lot of different ways we can do things within Mass General law.
It's still voluntary.
So all I wanted to do is echo on Brian's, Mr. Herr's point about the override. I think it would be handled differently than an underride. Specifically, we're talking about overriding state law, which limits us to going 2.5. So I think a discussion with town council very soon is required if we are going to need to go for an override.
Okay. Good?
Good.
So the chairman of the select board will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
You're so proud of yourself being done early.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Kamalo.
Yes, through the chair, I think based on the last discussion, it is our understanding that the budget article will also include an override article. And if we discuss with town council and town council says it's a separate article, we believe, if that's okay, the the board's vote will reflect that the override is part of the warrant articles we're submitting.
Oh, no.
Yes.
No, if we're gonna, if this board, if we're gonna be talking about overrides, we need to vote whether we're gonna support that concept or not as a board. We can't assume it's gonna be inside those other articles we just talked about just because they're all administrative. That's a whole different animal.
Therefore, given the deadline, we're now asking the board if the board would consider authorizing us to place a placeholder article.
I don't think we can do that tonight. I don't think that's in the agenda. This came out in discussion tonight, but the concept of the Board of Selectmen supporting an override without being on the agenda, I think is not appropriate.
No. Through the chair. The agenda expressly indicated the board will be discussing the list of articles. And we're saying, because this is the last meeting, the board can identify as placeholders any article that you think you'd want to be in the warrant.
No, I'd make a motion for a placeholder number 12 for a,
It's not approved.
for a possible override if needed.
Okay, so let's get this motion really clear, because I think the wording of the
Yeah.
motion is gonna matter, okay? It may not matter to the folks that were in the room tonight, but it's gonna matter to other people, and our job is the whole town, not just some, you know? So what is the motion again?
To put a placeholder in at number 12, it's under potential ATM 2020 warrant articles, to put a placeholder for a possible override if required by our final budget.
A possible override.
So if we take out the word possible and we don't need it, we can just, no action, right?
Correct.
Oh, we took no action.
So I would take the,
Okay.
I would take the word possible out.
But then that says that, my concern with that, I personally like the word possible,
I do,
because that, we're not voting tonight. I'm
possibility
not,
of,
Right, because none of these have the final wording in there anyway. You know, none of these. New trench safety office bylaw. That's not the whole wording of it. So all of these need words.
But we have a chance to discuss this and vote up or down as we go through this budget process. And I think Mr. Kamalu's point is we don't have time if we don't put a placeholder in there and allow us to talk about it later.
So I'll second a motion that creates a placeholder for a possible override if required
How about if we,
as a result of budget deliberations.
yeah. that's
if I may through the chair, to Ted Stone's point, if we're saying the word possible and if required, I think are redundant. So I think if we just say a placeholder for an override if required, is the same thing.
A placeholder for an override if required
By our final budget.
as a result of budget deliberations.
Yes, as a result of, okay.
That's the motion, I would second that motion.
Okay, I accept the friendly amendment.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, it carries.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, abstained, it carries.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience and thank you.